Namaste, welcome. Today we're going to talk about how to create your own sequences in yoga. And we're not going to go into any kind of big sequence creation mode. Today we're just going to try to understand the principle that underlies a well balanced sequence. And this principle is that any yoga pose or a sequence of poses wants to take as many joints in your body as possible through the range of motion available to them. Let's see what I mean. Let's say you enjoy the forward bend from Sukhasana. I'm in my Sukhasana, so I'm going to go into my forward bend, straighten my arms, put my palms on the ground, let my head hang in between my shoulders. And I'm going to notice that my lower back is the focal point around which the whole motion of my body is organized. It's like a center point. Just pay attention to your lower back. Notice where it went. It went from the neutral position and into the forward bend. So now your spine is contracted, bent forward. Now I'm going to start thinking, as much as I enjoy this pose, what could I do in order to take my lower back through the whole range of motion available to it? If it can go to the front, it most definitely can go to the back. So I'm going to lift up, support myself with my hands to the back, my fingers facing backward, and I'm going to give my back a back bend. Lifting my pelvis off the ground without changing the position of my legs. And see, now the lower back, the lumbar curve is accentuated there. So we're moving our back where it did not go in the previous pose. That's a counterpose. That's what a counterpose is. It takes the joint into the direction that it did not go in the pose. And now I'm going to reflect on where else my lower back can go because I want to be super balanced. It went front to back. It obviously can go side to side. So I'm going to do an overhead arm stretch from here to give my lower back a chance to bend right in this case. Linger here for a moment. Come back and not neglect the left side as well. I'm going to bend left. And come up. And now let's explore. Our lower back went to the front, went to the back, went to the right, went to the left. Can we do anything to integrate this if you don't want to do four poses? Of course, if you want to take your lower back through its whole range of motion, Kundalini Yoga is to the rescue because you can do the Kundalini stomach grind. That's going to naturally take your lower back, which again, here is the focal point of your motion, through the whole range of motion available to it. Large circles with your torso. And that's a very gentle front bend and back bend. I'm going to do a couple more. And just stop here. All right, let's keep exploring. Let's say that you want to do something from the tabletop. I'm going to get into the tabletop. Make sure that my knees are comfortable, that I'm well supported with my hands. And the epitome of a pose counterpose concept in yoga is the cat, where I hunch, and the cow, where I extend my neck and look straight. Now let's keep doing that as a dynamic pose because I want you to feel where the focal point of your motion is right now. The focal point is that point in your body around which all the rest of the motion is organized. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to notice. Hello, hello. No worries, no worries. That should make for a nice broadcast. All right. So back to cats and back to cows. Back to cats and back to cows. We're going to notice that the focal point of the motion is actually in between our shoulder blades, our upper back. So it contracts on the cat, it extends on the cow, contracts on the cat, extends on the cow. And that's what you want to do. If you have contracted something, you want to expand it in a counterpose. Now, let's see if we can do something else with this. From this, I'm gonna go back down on my heels into the child pose. And in the child, I'm gonna notice what's going on with my back. What's relaxed, what's contracted. I'm gonna notice what's curved and what's straight. And I'm gonna start thinking about what I can do to make those curves of my spine move in a different way. Notice your lower back. Notice your upper back. And we're gonna lift and get into the upward facing dog from here. And that is the counter pose, right? Because when your lower back was in the child, it felt and moved in a totally opposite way, right? Let's go back to the child so we can explore what happens in our upper back. What does it feel like right now? And now, as you swing your body back into the upward facing dog, notice that the motion of your upper back is the totally opposite motion. Just hang there and get a feel for it. Or you can move in between the child and the upward facing dog just to feel the difference. And that's the pose counter pose. All right, let's go back to the mat. I'm going to assume the staff pose. And for the staff pose, what I want to do here, want to explore where I can move from the staff. Let's say you like the staff and you want to start with this. I very obviously can move to the front, do the forward bend or Paschimottanasana. I'm going to come up and do the opposite thing for my back. If I went forward, I need to go back. So I'm going to lift into the reverse plank from here to give my back a back bend. Come down. Let's see very mindfully how this works. Notice what your back is doing. With your mind's eye, just trace your whole back. And now we want to give the back the opposite motion. Go back to the plank, and with your mind's eye, trace your back in the reverse plank. See? It's the opposite of what you did in the forward bend. We're going to come down. And the last thing we're going to explore today is that your body actually has a center line. And most of the joints in your extremities, in your arms, and in your legs, they have a range of motion that crosses that center line. What I mean, let me get back to the staff here. I'm going to support myself with my arms, palms on the ground, fingers facing backward. I'm going to lift one of my legs and do a huge leg swing. See my leg crossing the imaginary center line of my body? That's the whole range of motion available to my hip. You can extend it so that you can see better. Okay. And now, what I want to do, I want to make sure that another imaginary center line that divides my body into the front and back is also crossed. So I'm going to turn and start the opposite motion. That one is not crossing my center line because the ground prevents me from doing that. But if I'm working my hips, if I do the leg lifts, what I also want to do, I want to make sure that at some point in my practice, I let my leg go to the back of me. I'm going to come up, and now my leg is actually crossing the center line. See? So this is a counterpose too, because what it does, it takes your hip joint through the whole range of motion available to it in this plane, or in this plane, or in any plane that you can imagine where your body can have a center line. So there are poses, of course, that I can do in order for that leg of mine to cross that center line and get on my side and do the leg swings so that the leg crosses that center line that divides my body into two planes, front to back. I'm not going to bother you with official anatomical terms. That's my counterpose to my leg lifts. And I can incorporate this into a sequence. What I can do this, or I can even make my leg cross the actual center line and counteract that with the leg swings in a different plane. You don't need to do anything static or dynamic for this. I'm doing a dynamic pose just because it's easier to see how that happens in a dynamic pose. But anyways, if you're doing a leg lift and your hip moves to the side, what you want to do, you want to have your hip also move front to back at some point. So I'm going to do a leg extension here. And I might want to do a leg extension to the back of me. And that's how I've taken my hip joint, that hip joint, through the range of motion available to it. And that's the organizing principle of every single yoga sequence that is a balanced one. Even if you enjoy forward bends better than you enjoy the back bends, just make sure that somewhere in your practice you give your back a back bend. If you enjoy leg lifts, also make sure that you're adding something that counteracts the motion of a leg lift so that your hip joint can move the other way. We're going to be exploring more on that, but for today, that should be enough. So, thank you for doing the practice with me. Namaste.